Reciprocal functions and negative power. We need to sketch this curve. So first thing we need to do is label the axis V and X. So I'm going to show you how we get this curve. First thing is we need to write that as plus 0. Or in fact we could write it as equals x to the power minus 1 plus 0. C here, because general equation is k over ax plus b plus c. So what general equation is y equals to k over ax plus b plus c. Now the constant here, when we write it again, in this case is, so there's an a here, because that's 1. So in this case, this is Vx, and a equals 1. That's positive. And c is 0. So v equal to 0 at this point here. That's c, and that's 0. Okay, so now what we need to ask ourselves are two questions. What is the vertical asymptote and what is the horizontal asymptote? Vertical asymptote, that's when you set the denominator to 0. In this case, we said x equal to 0 because the denominator is x. And that's the vertical asymptote. So we come on to the x here. It says, okay, that's 0. So we draw a hidden line here. And that's x equal to 0. So that's the vertical asymptote. And the horizontal asymptote is we set v equal to 0. So that's v equal to 0. So we draw a dashed line at v equal to 0. So that v equal to 0. So those are the two things we need. But also we need the fact that this is odd. So the exponent here is, even though it's minus 1, it's still odd. So that means that it will be in the first quadrant and the third quadrant, because those are odd quadrants. So the graph will be coming from, when we draw it, will be coming from, obviously we draw from left to right, so we're coming down here, and it will be going that way, approaching the line of asymptote, but we never touch it. Again, it comes from left to right, so it comes down there, and approaching the line of asymptote, but it will never touch it. So that's how we sketch the graph. We need to check the important factors here. Check the exponent, check the a, it's positive, in this case it's positive. We need to set the denominator to 0 to get the vertical asymptote, work out what the value of c is to work out the horizontal asymptote. Here's another question we need to deal with. First of all, label your axes, so that's a and x. And now this is plus 0, as you can see. So your horizontal asymptote is 0, that's c, so 0. That means when we're going to draw horizontal asymptote, so we draw, that's a equal to 0. So that's a equal to 0. That's horizontal asymptote. Now we need to do the vertical asymptote. So that's VA. We need to set the x, the denominator, to 0. So x equal to 0. So this is x equal to 0. Right. Now we need to check what quadrant our graph is going to be in. We know that if it's positive, if it's 1, the exponent is 1. So in this case, we know it's ax, a as a function of x, minus x to the power minus 1 plus 0 is the equation we're working on, and this one here is odd, so it should be in the first and the third quadrant, but there is a negative a here, so that's minus 8, so that counteract that, so that will put it in the second and the fourth quadrant. So we'll be sketching our curve from second, so this is the second quadrant, second like that, and sketching it there from second quadrant, and that's how we sketch the curve. It is second and fourth because a is negative, even though n is odd, minus 1. So that's important to watch out. General formula is y equals k over ax plus b plus c, which is a type of equation where y equals ax to the power of n, but n is minus 1, so n is minus 1. A is positive, a is negative, so that's negative, n is minus 1, so that tells us that, oh, don't forget it's plus c as well. Now we got this graph here to work on. This is the y axis, and that's the x. So we got two situations here. The first one is y equals 2 over x to the power 4 plus 0, which can be written as 2x to the power minus 4 plus 0. And the second situation is y equals to minus 2 over x to the power 4 plus 0, which is minus 2 x to the power minus 4 plus 0. So we now know the horizontal asymptote HA equals to 0, and the vertical asymptote is also equal to 0, because if you set x to the power 4 to 0, you get 0. In both cases, HA equal to 0, VA equal to 0. So that's the first thing we draw. We draw the line of, so this is horizontal asymptote. That's where y equal to 0. And the vertical asymptote, that's where x equal to 0. Now, because the power here is even, so it should be actually in even and, but because if you square a negative, you get positive. So the graph is coming here, so it's going to come from there to there, it's going to come like that, become positive, and so it's even, so it will make it positive. All the values will be positive. So for even exponent, when a is positive, you get them in the numerator, so when a is positive, and in the denominator when a is negative. So this is a negative here, and that's a positive here. So it's in the denominator when a is negative. A is negative, so your graph will come in from there, from left. We draw graphs from left to right, and it would go there. Trying to approach, and it's coming from infinity all the way here to approach x equal to 0, but never touches it. And that's how you sketch the graph.